Good evening, Year 11, and welcome to your night before news for Maths Paper 2, one of your two calculator papers this time. So, just like in the last night before news, let's start with what's going to be in this exam. We know lots of things that came up in paper 1. So below are all of those topics which came up in paper 1. Now, it's unlikely that these topics are going to come up again. Not impossible. We might see some of these things again, but the likelihood is that the other questions in paper 2 and paper 3 are going to be on different topics. So it's not don't revise these things, but don't spend anywhere near as much time revising these things, and probably best to revise things that aren't currently on the screen. I'm going to give you about 20 seconds to look through these things, think about then what we might need to revise, and I'll talk through some key things in a second. Okay, so those things that came up in paper 1. What then can you do for paper 2 and 3? As I said previously, we don't know exactly what's going to be in the exam, but we can say that those things that have come up are unlikely to come up again, and it makes more sense to revise things we haven't yet seen rather than going back over those things. We can't guarantee whether things will come up in paper 2 or paper 3, but we can begin to focus on these things, and then after paper 2 we'll have a much clearer idea for paper 3. I'm going to talk through this strand by strand, so thinking about topics, starting with the number strand. So lots of these things we didn't see in paper 1. We didn't see standard form. We didn't see anything to do with product of prime factors. So these two things would be a really, really good place to revise in the number strand, particularly standard form, particularly product of prime factors. We can also look at this in probability and statistics. There were a few probability questions in paper 1, but they normally come up across all the 3 papers. We did see a pie chart, but I'd expect to see a lot more statistical diagrams in paper 2 and paper 3. So if you know this is something you're not confident on, going and revising statistics would be really, really important. We also have geometry. Lots of these things weren't in paper 1. Trigonometry, Pythagoras, circles, some volume, lots of these things didn't come up in paper 1. So it'd be a really, really good thing to go away and revise for papers 2 and 3. Ratio and proportion. There was a lot of ratio in paper 1. Doesn't mean it can't come up again. But for paper 2 and 3, I would really, really stress the importance of revising percentages. There wasn't a lot of percentages in paper 1, and percentages normally make up a big, big part across the 3 exams. So percentages would definitely be something to go away and look at. There wasn't a conversion graph in paper 1. Again, we know these are quite common. So it could be something, again, that's going to come up in paper 2 or paper 3. And then the final strand is our algebra. Didn't again see loads of algebra in paper 1. We didn't see that really common question where you might have to simplify and collect like terms. You might have to expand a bracket. You might have to factorize. We didn't see any of that. So likely that those things are going to come up. If you know you're struggling or you're weak on algebra, spend some time to revise this. In particular, that algebra section of the Sparks revision would be a good place to look at. If not, I'll talk about some other areas we could revise. Final key thing in algebra, which we didn't see on paper 1, was plotting a graph. A linear or a quadratic graph is likely to come up in paper 2 or paper 3. So we've thought about the topics that might come up. What are you going to do this evening? Well, similar to what I suggested last time, if you want to look at specific topics, I would start on Sparks Maths. Go to the independent learning page and type in some of those topics from the last few slides that you know you're not confident on. You could do a similar thing on ExamQ. Go on, type in some topics. You might type in solving equations. You might type in percentages and see the kind of questions that come up. Remember, when you go on to ExamQ, make sure you change this bar to say GCSE Maths Foundation. Make sure you change this one to paper 2 or paper 3. The third place to find questions is Maths Genie. Again, make sure you click on GCSE Revision, and you can again search for those topics that you want to revise. Use those slides we've just looked at to help you. Once I've mentioned Sparks Revision, that nicely breaks the revision down into different strands. So if you, as I said, if you know algebra is a strand you're not confident on, go and look at that algebra strand. If you know probability and statistics, again, is something you're not as confident on, go and look at that strand on the Sparks Revision page. I'm sure your teachers will mention this, but this is a brilliant resource that has been put together for these exams. So take the time to look on here at those different strands, at those things you're not as confident on. If you want to do practice papers, again, I would direct you to Maths Genie. Make sure you choose Excel, make sure you choose the right tier. That's where I'd go for past papers. So I'm sure tonight we're going to do some really, really important revision. That's going to help us. I mentioned it last time. Tomorrow morning is the biggest difference you can make. We're talking about 4 or 5 marks, if not more, you can make tomorrow morning. The difference between a 3 and a 4 or a 4 and a 5. Last week on Friday, this was brilliant. There was a real buzz in the conservatory and canteen. The hub was busy and there were people in there coming and asking for help on things they couldn't do. So the hub is open from 7 o'clock. Make sure we come in and use that space. There'll be maths teachers down there to help you if there's things you can't do. Bring some questions that you haven't been able to answer. This is where you make the difference. Bringing in questions that you can do and practicing them isn't going to be a big benefit. Bringing in those questions that you have tried the night before and you have got stuck on, and then learning how to do those are those marks we're going to pick up. And I can't stress this enough. Bring in something you haven't been able to do, put your hand up, ask for help from any of the maths teachers, make the difference between grades by getting help on things you haven't been able to answer. We'll then have the revision in the conservatory and canteen. We saw these breakfast things on Friday. Again, scan through it, look at a question you're not sure how to answer, attempt it, check the answers, and if you then don't understand it, ask for help. Yes, try as many questions as you can, but target those ones you don't feel confident on. That is what is going to help you. There'll then be a lineup at 8:50, a couple of final reminders, particularly about the use of a calculator. This is a calculator paper, but come in tomorrow morning with that right attitude, like so many of us did on Friday. Was really, really positive to see. Come in and ask for that help. So year 11, good luck for tomorrow. I'm sure we're going to get lots done this evening to put in the groundwork, and then come in tomorrow morning with anything you can't do, and doing that, going to make sure we're going to smash these exams. Good luck.